Avatar: The Last Airbender. So this is one of my favorite shows. I watched this as a kid. I was watching it as it aired, so I was excited for like the next episode to came out. And I wasn't even supposed to watch it at first. My parents thought it was too adult, but then my dad started watching a bit of it and he got into it. And so we watched it together, and that was cool, especially as the plot sort of heated up in the second and third season. Long story short, today I spontaneously thought I want to watch Avatar. I'm going to watch an episode, and I put this one on. Second episode of the third season, number 42, The Headband. Go watch it if you want. Basically, Avatar's about a boy who's supposed to control all four of these elements. He's got to save the world from the fire element people, who are the evil ones. They want to conquer everyone else. He only knows the air element at first. In the first season, though, which is titled Water, he learns the water element. Then in the second season, Earth, he learns the earth element. Now it is the third season. So he doesn't know fire yet, but he's supposed to learn it. And also bad things are happening because in the climax of the last season, the Avatar got super hurt in this bad fight. And now the whole world thinks he's dead. And it's like, oh man, there's no hope. This is a low point. So the third season started one episode before this one. And Aang wakes up from this coma. His friends tell him, hey, everyone thinks you're dead. And we're all disguised as Fire Nation people. Maybe we're trying to like infiltrate the Fire Nation from the inside. So that's what's going on. But in this episode, which I was really surprised by, there was a lot of fun and beauty to it. I didn't remember. This Avatar guy, Aang, who was frozen in ice for 100 years, his life suddenly jumps from being a normal kid, right, before the iceberg, to then now he's the chosen one 100 years in the future, and he's responsible for saving the world. And he gets this opportunity to turn away from this recent news that, hey man, you almost died, you completely blew it. And wait, I get to be a kid again. He gets to enroll in Fire Nation school. And so Aang didn't choose to get himself in this situation, but he's kind of a go with the flow type of guy. He's also a total make lemonade from lemons type of guy. So he just rolled with it. He got in this situation and he's like, oh, look at this. I can be a kid again and be in school and be the class clown and be fun. And this is where we started out, is that, man, I can only imagine how fun it would have been to be one of the adults creating this show, to have this fun episode where you get to re-engage mentally with this levity that you have of being in school. And that's going to be the main idea here in this video, because when I first watched this episode, it was 16 years ago when it aired. And I was a kid like the characters of this show. And I probably just accepted the premise of this episode being about school super easily back then because, well, I was in school. It didn't seem special to me. And when you're at that age, your whole life is centered around being in school. And on one hand, there's this part of me that is totally pleased to not be in school anymore, to be free from all that grueling and unenjoyable stuff, homework, tests, etc. The fact that you don't have freedom as a minor to make your life how you want it, that's great to be done with. But as many of you who are like me that are also out of school have realized, the social atmosphere that you have in school is really unique and special. That environment literally forces you to just hang out with people all day. And who does it force you to hang out with? It forces you to hang out with everyone, so long as they're the same age as you, which is such a broad category. And when we get into adulthood, it's very different, because in this main chunk of our lives, now we have agency for how we spend our time, who we associate with, where we work, right? Our social pool tends to become much more focused and narrow than that pool that we're in when we're in school. And of course, this is a good thing, like having that freedom of association rules. We all know how school can be awful and there's bullying and uncomfortable situations because of everyone being forced to be together. And it's just true, like adulthood is straight up better. But the one good thing about school is that it is this special moment where you're going to be united with people that you wouldn't eventually normally be united with, all just by this one thing that, hey, look, we're in this universal experience, this battle to endure this education prison that we've been forced into. And there's some cute moments in this episode where you get the energy of that, where there's some Fire Nation kids helping clue in Aang on the protocol he doesn't know about. Why does this girl help Aang? Is it because humans are intrinsically good? Is it because she thinks he's cute? I mean, maybe, but I'm going to argue it's just because there's this basic level of human empathy that, hey, we're in this together. This situation kind of sucks that we have to be in school. Maybe you're getting scolded by the teacher, and I've been there, and it sucks, bro. And that's a way that we instantly connect. So yes, there's cons to the school thing. There's part of me that doesn't envy Aang when I watch this episode, but I really do get to vicariously enjoy this process of him going back to school. And I'm reminded of all the fun parts of it, because he's so literally like an adult would going back to school. Yeah, he is a kid. He's not an adult, but he had his childhood ripped away from him. He had to go straight into adventuring the world and like dealing with his inner demons, dealing with self-actualization. And these are all things we can associate with that feeling of plunging into adulthood. It's all the same stuff. It's this sense that life isn't about just, being careless, eating through time, just chasing fun all day. And then now suddenly we're realizing that we are the sole providers for ourselves. We have to master these difficult facets of survival head on. So the adult viewer can relate to Aang, because even though he's not an adult, he's kind of been dealing with the adult world and now gets to go back to being a kid. And we realize it's not a drag that we have to go back to school now. This is actually fun. Who's on? And what makes things more interesting is that Aang is actually the only one who gets this. He has the attitude of childlike play and fun still in him, despite all these other Fire Nation kids being sort of bogged down by the seriousness, the rigor, and the structure of the school. And they're probably just thinking about getting it over with. They're like, oh, I can't wait to just be done with school. Where Aang's like, nah, I'm back at school and I'm enjoying it. And I'll take this moment to make a point to people who are still in school, still in some kind of education. Try to enjoy it. We all go through that phase at some point of just wanting school to be over with. We're eager to get into our real lives and to have control over what we do. But that's one of the things we fail to see as a youth, is that the freedom we will come to have is something we will have for the vast majority of our lifespan. Those years of relying on your parents and having this free, forced interaction with all of society are really a small, temporary piece of your life. So it's good to try to make the best of that. And I'm not talking about the academic part and all of that. That could be its own conversation. But I mean, specifically, socially, take advantage of this situation that you're in. Because the adult world, the real world, is only becoming more and more antisocial. This is thanks to social media. We just had a worldwide catastrophe that also did not help. And I'm sure it's also not easy being a kid these days socially. I'm sure it's getting harder for the same reasons. But you have to understand it's way harder to make new friends as an adult. Your social pool is essentially limited to your coworkers and the friends of your existing friends. I'd say between those things and maybe hobbies and a little extracurriculars, this is the bread and butter of how most people tend to associate as adults. But in school, it's like you have this huge shuffling social factory. Every year you get new classes. Each class has a different set of people, different set of opportunities. And you're forced to be with these people over and over and over every day for months. Adults don't have the patience or even just the opportunities to try someone out as a friend like that unless it's in their workplace. So these school friendships that are able to slowly emerge from just hanging out at the same place, attending the same class for 90 days, slowly becoming closer, this just doesn't really happen in the adult world. So appreciate those kind of opportunities, even if it's just small acquaintance type connections while you still can. But if you don't do that, hey, one day you get to watch this episode like me and you get to smile through the whole thing and think, oh, how nice it would be to go back with my adult wisdom and really make the most of it all. Which brings me to my next important point, that Aang gets to do that. And whether that's because he was always that way or maybe he's been made comfortable through his intense life experience, Aang is different from all these other kids. And it's not because he's the Avatar. It's not because he's not Fire Nation. It's because he's comfortable with himself and he's comfortable expressing himself. And this is such a powerful and special trait to have at this age. And you can see it too, because everyone is enamored with him or maybe even frightened by him in this ability, because some of the other kids don't even know that that's possible to be that way, to carry yourself in that manner. And the main trajectory of Aang's interaction with these other students in this episode is that he's helping them loosen up, helping them feel that way that he does. And this climax is in him hosting this big dance party for them where he initiates them all into starting to express themselves. And this really is the most important, powerful thing that anyone could have as a young person, as a child, or even as an adult. And it's something that most people don't really have, or at least they don't have 100%. And okay, maybe this is part of what makes Aang the chosen one, because even at the beginning of this episode, he's defiant about having to wear a headband. He doesn't want to disguise his identity, because even that feels dishonest.
I'm not going out if I can't wear my arrow proudly.
Everyone else puts on the Fire Nation clothes. They don't hesitate at all. But Aang's different. He's pure. He's resolute within himself. He doesn't have any cognitive dissonance or shame about who he is. So even this logical solution to disguise his identity in the enemy territory feels like an affront to his morality. Something I realize in life more and more over time is that we only ever have reason to be insecure about things with others if we are in fact insecure about those things. And I know that sounds like a nothing statement. I said like X equals X. But the point is that if you feel insecure about being a Bionicle superfan, or maybe you have a speech impediment, or you're a virgin, that thing that you are insecure about, when it gets a light shown on it, when you're with people, they will feel your insecurity, even on an unconscious level. Even when you think you're hiding it, they will pick up on it. And they're going to feel a bit of that uncomfortability as well. It sort of transmits in the room. But yet, you could be totally comfortable with yourself as a stuttering Bionicle virgin, and people will actually admire you. It's not really about the traits of yourself, it's about how you feel about them. People will gravitate to you if you have that kind of self-assuredness, because true confidence, comfortability with yourself, like shown in this episode, is almost more valuable than gold. Overcoming our insecurities to become completely internally confident is obviously easier said than done. And that's because we all actually have pretty good reasons historically to be insecure about ourselves. There's usually clear events and experiences that led to those insecurities. Maybe your dad told you, grow up for liking biological. The school lunch table laughs at you for being a virgin. These things still singe, and they are part of why we are the way that we are today. I don't think it's in the budget of this video for me to provide you with a serum that's going to heal you of these insecurities, but it can be done. And it can be done if you investigate them deeply enough, if you really ask yourself the tough questions of why these things that bother you about yourself bother you. And also just ask yourself, who are you living your life for? And this is another one of Aang's strengths. Maybe Aang might be kind of insecure at times, like let's say when he's talking to Katara, because Katara is his crush. But when he's just hanging around a bunch of random Fire Nation kids, he's not overly worried about how they're going to perceive him. He's just being himself. I think it's very interesting that there's this scene where the school bully has his first interaction with Aang, and Aang sort of gets off with just a warning. Even the other kid that he talks to is like, wow, I can't believe he didn't beat you up. And I think that's because Aang didn't have any ill will towards this bully guy. He was just a good sport about it. He didn't take offense to this popular guy telling him to back off, but he also didn't cower in fear too much either. Because I think if he cowered in fear, it would give a message to the bully that you are a bully. It would make the bully feel like a bully, but Aang didn't do that. Aang just made him feel like a normal dude. He just treated the popular guy like any person. And I don't think the popular guy gets that treatment very often, which is maybe why he liked it, but was also kind of bothered by that experience. So Aang comes from the tribe of people that are associated with this element of air. And air makes sense symbolically as the most free element. And these air nomad people are free spirits. And he embodies this in his character. And you can see this too, that his self-expression throughout the show is he's unashamed, but it's often weird as well. That's part of showing how comfortable he is with himself, is that his charm is that he'll just enthusiastically go for whatever he wants to do. He'll do his little airbending gimmicks, his fun magic tricks, his attempts at humor, just because he wants to, right? Sometimes they're going to hit, sometimes they'll miss, but he doesn't let the audience control who he is. Aang knows in his heart that there is no wrong way to dance. And this is illustrated very effectively when this dance party gets going in full force towards the end of the episode, because we see that the conformist Fire Nation kids, they start to gradually try this feeling of like, oh, is this letting loose? Is this expressing my feelings physically? They ease into the motions. And the dances that you see are often kind of quirky, kind of weird. At first, the kids are timid about the whole operation, and they even think that they're not capable of dancing, or that's something that they can't do because it's not in the status quo of that area. And they're good kids, really. There's people who aren't very good at sitting still and being respectful, that you should idolize these people. But these people are also representative of when you're completely unbalanced in that direction, when you only operate based on fear of the unknown and let that control you. And there's this theme in this episode of this battle between chaos and control, maybe, or order and freedom, that's represented by the school kids and this new fresh energy that Aang brings. But I'm not quite satisfied with that, because Even people who have lives that appear very chaotic and free, they're often just the different side of the same coin that those conformist Fire Nation kids are on. Because the highly obedient rule followers, right, they're afraid to try new things that are outside their paradigm. And those things include being wild and self-expression and breaking rules. Now, the pleasure-seeking rebels, they skip class, they abuse substances, but they're actually often doing this seemingly chaotic behavior to regain control and a sense of agency. And what makes Aang different is that he's not hosting this dance party as a reactionary. He's not trying to sabotage the systems of control. It's not a message. He's hosting the dance party because dancing is fun. It's honest. It's a pure way to get in touch with yourself. He's sort of transcending this paradigm for a second to just say, hey, wait, dancing is cool. And it's typically cool even in the way that it's understood because people agree that if dancing feels honest, you are doing it right. Which is different from other forms of art and expression. Because if you paint and it's very abstract and weird and not resembling much, but it felt good to make, people still will kind of raise eyebrows. They'll think, who's going to buy this? What was the value of this artwork? What's the merit of this as a painting? Yet if you go out into the night, you find a dance floor with a DJ, you let loose a little bit, nobody's going to come up to you and ask you, hey, what's the value of this? Who's ever going to buy this? I think it's selfish to dance like that. No one's going to say that because dancing is allowed to feel good. Now back to Aang. He's the main dude. He's the main protagonist of this show. He's on this big epic journey. And part of why I really like this episode in context of that journey is because it actually feels like this very appropriately timed filler for Aang's story. Because Aang just underwent this huge setback, his biggest setback yet. He had a chance to defeat these important bad guys on the enemy side. He could have saved the Earth Kingdom from being defeated, and he blew it. As far as the world is concerned right now, he's dead. So this shining light of hope that he offered to the world has been extinguished, which must suck. Really logically, if we think, what does Aang need to be doing right now in light of all this? He needs to be training. He doesn't know firebending still. He should be planning how to take down the Fire Lord. He needs to be planning how to allocate the resources they still have left in this little rebellion. He needs to be thinking about saving the world. This dude should be stressed. He's got a lot on his plate. He needs to get into gear. He needs to focus quick. And you know, sometimes in life, it really does feel like that way for us non-avatars. Because sometimes we're carrying the weight of the world and we've just got so much to do, so many things to solve. But thinking that actually puts us in a very unproductive state of being. Because what the world needs from us is our best self. And our best self isn't a brooding, tortured, overworked masochist. Our best self is someone who's springing with life, excited to take on the day, like Aang. Sometimes it's really not enough to just be going through the motions if we aren't breathing life into what we do. People don't need to just see the results. The people need the soul. They need the vigor, the excitement, the energy, the passion. These are the qualities of your best self. And it is true that we have a lot to do. We have a lot of things to fix. We got to make things right, just like Avatar Aang here. But if we want to bring our full force to those problems, we need to bring our invigorated, energetic, passionate self to this battlefield, not that disillusioned self, not the tired one, because that version of ourselves is slow and uninspiring to everyone involved. And in this critical moment where most of us would just stew in that stress, Aang says, you know what, I'm going to discard my responsibilities for a few days so I can reactivate this part of me that's just a kid that wants to have fun. Because that's Aang when he's at his best, when he has that levity. And obviously Aang doesn't do this super consciously in the show. The opportunity just kind of falls in his lap and he's like, oh, shoot, I guess I have to do this now. I have to go have fun at school for a little bit. But it is what he needed before getting back to that real serious heavy-duty stuff he has to face, those trials of his life that can at times darken his soul.
You have no idea. This is so messed up.
And while Aang is overcoming his failure and his hardship with this lighthearted joy, on the other side, our troubled antagonist Zuko spends this episode brooding from his success and the restoration of his public honor. You see Zuko, this prince of the Fire Nation, he was banished. He was told not to return until he captured the Avatar, but he's been given credit now for killing the Avatar. And he didn't even really kill the Avatar, his sister did, but then we're also not even sure if the Avatar is dead because, well, he isn't. But we've seen 2 long seasons of this immense toil and hardship for this endlessly troubled character. We get to now see Zuko living the dream. even though it's kind of a farce, as far as his whole nation is concerned, as far as most importantly his father is concerned, he has accomplished what he's been tasked to do. He's regained his honor. He finally gets this approval that he's been searching for years and years of his life. He's no longer in exile. He's no longer dishonored. He has a girlfriend. Things are going good. Zuko got everything he wanted. But did he? And this is such a fantastic arc in the story because it's just so real. This feeling that oftentimes in life, our dreams aren't our own. They've been projected onto us. Society, our friends, especially our family, can all put different kinds of baggage on us about what we're supposed to do with our lives. In different ways, they're all telling us that you are not enough. You need to earn this much money to be enough. You need to look like this to be enough. You need to behave in this way to be enough. You need to have this kind of job and this kind of social standing to be enough. And many of us will spend our whole lives chasing these things. Of course, there are also good and honest pursuits as well, but the trap of chasing these things for the wrong reasons, to fill a hole in ourselves, this is as old as time, and this can happen to anyone. And some of you know for yourself, you've experienced this. You got something that you dreamt of for so long, and then you realize that it didn't really change things in the way you'd hoped. It's still you. Changing the external world, it can help, but at the end of the day, that internal world is still there, and whatever problems it had before, it still has if we didn't address them. And we see this all the time with celebrities and people in the spotlight who have these big major addictions and problems and vices, because they're the ones who max out everything and then find out it wasn't what they thought it would be. They give those honest accounts of putting everything into the external to try to make things right, doing what they thought would make them happy, and it wasn't the answer. They get fame, they get money, they get the girls, they felt the high highs. Everything they thought would satisfy them, it just didn't quite do the trick. And of course, when this happens, these celebrities like Zuko start to question who they are without all of those external things. What do they actually want? And for a person like Zuko, who's been desperately tunnel visioned on this one task for years, to capture the Avatar, and really to regain the love of his father, that's what it's really about. For a person like Zuko, it's hard to even know what his true inner feelings are because he's been so caught up in that. And we see that frequently as something he struggles with over and over again so deeply in this show. People will say, hey, Zuko, what's wrong? He doesn't know. What do you want, Zuko? What do you really want? He doesn't know anymore. Who are you, Zuko?
I don't know.
This character he's been playing, the Banished Prince, was a role that was set onto him by his father. And now, out of nowhere, he's allowed to now be something besides that. He's allowed to now be the noble prince who redeemed his honor. But why does it still feel off? Yes, you could say it's because he knows technically he didn't kill the Avatar. It's just the appearance of it, right? He's just getting the perks. But the real important reason here for why it feels off is because he's been propelled again into another role that he didn't choose for himself. Everything's supposed to be fine now. You're supposed to be the good boyfriend, the happy, good, rich, and royal prince. But everything isn't fine. Something is still boiling inside him. And at this exact moment in the show, what's eating at him the most is that he betrayed his uncle Iroh. And Iroh's the only one who really cared for him and really asked for him to look inside himself and ask what he himself wanted. And he does love Iroh, but in that stressful situation he was in, he threw Iroh away to cash in that prize that he'd spent his whole life pining for. And it makes sense because it seems like he'd be willing to give anything to get that love of his father. He'd been so obsessed. And so in the episode, we see Zuko visit Iroh in jail. And I think there is some technical explanation for them literally not having that voice actor available for Iroh. So that's why there's no lines in the episode. But, I said whatever that, I think this is totally fate. This is exactly the way this episode should be written because we feel the power of Iroh's silence. And it's appropriate. This man gave everything again and again to help Zuko out just from the good of his own heart. He had endless patience with him. But finally, we see that his patience has run out. And it's not really a secret in the show that Iroh is this character with this very, very strong inner fortitude. And we know that watching just because of how insanely patient he is with Zuko. Because even after this point in the show, he's going to regain his patience and he's going to continue to help despite all the times he's been unappreciated and screwed over. And why is Iroh like this? It's really because he's old. He's experienced and he's wise from that, not because he's special or different from the other characters, but he lived this life and he kept his heart open throughout all those trials that tempted him to close it. You have to really consider Iroh's age in all this, because he could have had his own whole big long life and big arc just like Zuko's before he ever even became a renowned general, before all the stuff about the tragedy of losing his son. And before this is a whole nother journey for him, this long trial of looking after Zuko. He has so much experience. And that's why Iroh has the good advice, because he's already made all these mistakes for himself. But for as much as Iroh wishes he could prevent his loved ones from making these same mistakes, sometimes we have to make those mistakes for ourselves to truly learn the lessons we need to. Even if someone else like Iroh has already given us the answers to our woes and that path to find happiness in clear terms. And this is the same reason that I and many others will look back at those days of being a kid in school with a certain fondness, or maybe just a certain yearning that we could have been more authentic, been more comfortably ourselves. Because we lived through it. We learned enough about ourselves to realize the ways in which we were insecure or inauthentic at those points in our lives. And maybe in some cases you can hear the right thing at the right time that will light a spark. You can get that advice from Uncle Iroh that will help you meaningfully grow sooner than you would have if you had to make that mistake yourself and go the long way. But sometimes it just doesn't work like that. And so I appreciate this challenging beauty of Iroh's silence in jail, of a man that wants to help others as much as he can, yet he also knows in his heart that there are times when even the best words of wisdom cannot substitute true life experience. And maybe that's my final takeaway from this episode, is that for as much as I may urge the hypothetical 14-year-old to really stop judging themselves and stop letting others' judgments define them so that they can maximally enjoy their time at school, maybe my words are nothing more than a kind sentiment. Because just like in Zuko's case, it's going to be an inside job. If they're going to meaningfully change, it's got to come from within themselves. But that's not the end of the story here. It doesn't mean that the takeaways and the wisdom are useless because people need to learn things themselves. It's just that I can't change others, but I can keep track of myself. So I can't go to being a kid in school again, but I can bring that Aang self-assured lightness to my everyday life now and make sure that I'm not being mired down by those heavy realities of all the things I feel I need to do and fix and make right in my life. I can remember today that there is no wrong way to dance.